Time was when people looked up into what they believed were the heavens for enlightenment. In modern times, we have more reliable information, much closer to home. One of the best, possibly the best, source of information available to all of us about our universe and most things in it are our public libraries. Food for Thought Productions is pleased to present Mr. Arthur Pond, manager of the Los Angeles Public Library for the East San Fernando Valley region, to tell us all about this valuable resource. Here he is with our producer,
it's such a pleasure
Lee Baker.
to have you, and I've appreciated the library system so much, and I don't think a whole lot of people realize how much you really do for the community. Now that everybody's talking about education, can you tell us what your contribution, library's contribution is to the education of our children and all the citizens? What do you consider your mission?
Well, the library feels that its mission is basically a sort of para-academic role. We exist well with outside that, but we are not teachers per se, but we provide the material that teachers need in order to do their job, and we provide access to the full range of information available. As a teacher, what you're hoping is that as you instruct, as you talk about a subject with your class, that your students will become interested enough in it to make it their own, to care about it, to investigate it further, and that's where we come in. They come to us, and we have the happy honor and pleasure of helping them find whatever it is that is going to help complete their assignment, bring the subject alive, satisfy their curiosity on that given topic.
Do you have a lot of teachers coming in, getting reference material beyond the textbook that goes with their course, for example?
Extensively, and that is something that they generally do throughout their careers, from their first day in class to become a teacher, pursuing their credentials, all the way through all of their time as a teacher. If you're preparing your unit on whatever it happens to be, from higher theoretical imaginary math down to the Pilgrims arriving at Plymouth Rock, we're pretty much your main resource. With the exception of university libraries, school libraries in the state of California have been so underfunded that we tend to play, I believe, a more major role in that process in California than we might in another state.
And what about, you've described how the teachers use it. What about students from grammar school up? When they come in, what do you do for them?
Well, we have a symbiotic relationship with the schools that works very well for us. The trick for us is that students pretty much have to come to the library, and we enjoy and revel in our ability to help them get through their schoolwork. The trick is not just to help them fulfill their assignment, but also to help them realize how much there is to know, and the role of the librarian in finding that out. We don't want people to feel like, oh, I have to write a report on whatever it is, and I'll go to the library, and as soon as I'm done with this report, I'm getting out of that place, and I'm never going back once I stop having homework. If that's how people feel when they get out of school, then we don't have library users. And in order to survive, we, of course, have to have library users. So what we want to do in the process is to emphasize the role of the library in creating a well-rounded population. People who can get what they need to know, whether it's to write their report for geometry on some famous mathematician, or to decide what party to vote for, or to learn how to fix their cracked windshield, or make a cake, or what kind of bug that is on the leaf on the tree outside their window. Whatever it is that might cause a person to be curious, we should be able to help them find more information on.
Well, I've noticed that you have a much wider range of resources as far as the range in books that you carry as opposed to the school libraries. And it doesn't seem to be quite as many restrictions about what you can have on the shelves.
Certainly. Well, the reasons for that are threefold. One is they just don't have the budget, especially in this state, Two is that if you're buying materials for a school library, you are buying them in support of the curriculum of that particular school. You have a teacher whom every year does their assignment on the California missions or whatever it is. You buy material particularly for those assignments, whereas a public library tries to buy material for the wide range of questions that come in the door.
Interests.
And the third
Beyond the
is,
curricula.
absolutely, absolutely, because once you're out of school, your interest may maintain in the area of your academic pursuits. You are an English major, you wish to read all the great playwrights and essayists and all of that, no problem. On the other hand, you took your degree in engineering and now you'd like to start reading playwrights or science fiction or just something on how to grow azaleas.
That's when you finish your formal education, then you can continue as an autodidact. That's one of my favorite words. In other words, auto, self, didact, teach. So anybody who gets interested in anything from scratch, then the librarian's guide as far as, you set up a course for yourself and the books and the references and so forth. And that what you do with us autodidacts. I was mentioning to you earlier that all the way through school, I did half of my education in the library because it was this much broader range of sources, books there. When you get your training as a librarian, how does that, what is it that you are educated to do? What is like job description is what I'm asking for.
Well, that's certainly a multi-part question. Let's start with library education.
Pick any part you like.
Well, library education is a favorite topic of mine, but it has changed dramatically in the 15 years since I graduated from library school because of the revolution in electronic availability of information. Right now in public libraries, we have sort of a small grade crisis going. There are not nearly enough librarians graduating from library schools every year to fill the jobs we have available. And many of the people graduating from library school are graduating in specialties more appropriate for what we call special librarianship, which really means business or corporate level librarianship. There was a library student at a luncheon I attended last year who was going to work for art.com. And her question was, why would I come to work for a public library for a salary about a third less than I would make working for this .com? And the response of Susan Kent, our city librarian, was, oh, hell, take the money. But the flip side of that is there is a lot of good reasons to go into public librarianship beyond just being able to get a job. The satisfaction of serving the public, the contribution to the community in terms of creating a resource, a cultural venue, and involvement with people is incredibly satisfying. Yes, I think we'd all like to make more money. We're working on it. But in the meantime, I'm doing this job because I love it.
Right.
And I feel incredibly fortunate to be that way. I mean, I think it's probably true of all of us that, yes, we'd rather win the lottery and take off for that 2-year trip around the world. But I can't think of very many professions where folks feel like when they're done with that 2-year trip around the world, what they want to come back and do is to work in their field. And I just love it. What I would like to do is not have to worry about an income anymore and do reference work in a public library. The challenge of answering any question that walks in the door on any given day
And you
is
know
just
where
fabulous.
to go get the answer.
You don't always know,
Well,
but you
how
know
do
where
you
to
find
start.
out? Oh, I
You
see.
start using the resources you've got, you see what ideas they stimulate within your brain, you talk to your colleagues. As you discuss it with the person you're seeking the information for, the process evolves. It's technically called a reference interview. We start off, you tell me what you want. And often what people ask for is what they think will get them the information they're ultimately looking for, but not the actual information themselves. I once had a woman come in and ask me for a list of all of the cotton mills in the state of California. Now, I didn't have a clue where to start on a thing like that, so we started looking through a lot of business reference materials. And as we talked, it turned out what she was looking for was cotton batting for quilting. We spent about 15 minutes before I realized what she really wanted was a list of fabric stores. Not to my credit, by the way. I should have asked her more questions and gotten that done faster. But it's an example of the process of figuring out what people are looking for. Sometimes it's real straightforwards. I need to rent a hearse for a Halloween play. Other times it's extremely vague. If I had a message to give to students everywhere, it would be, ask your teachers questions so that when you come to the library, you know exactly what you're looking for. Yes, it's true. Everyone is sitting there and the teachers just said this is what the assignment is, and everyone just looks up at them as though they know. But most people don't know. They're really confused by that, and that's true from kindergarten through postdoctoral studies.
So part of your job is to find out what the question is.
In many ways, one of the most interesting parts, to try to get in there and find out exactly what is wanted, as opposed to just general information.
I've noticed that since I was a child going to the library, which was just a place to get books, you've got much more that is offered. It's almost become a community center. And I live near one of your branches, the one in North Hollywood, and there's an area in the children's section that is really a performance center. They have a series of programs, almost like little concerts, or you have music concerts and so forth. How long has that been going on, and how did that come into being? That's sort of an enrichment that's fairly recent, isn't it?
Some variation on programs in libraries has been going on for, I would guess, over 100 years. Just depends on how much emphasis you place on it and what the role of that programming is. For children, our programming tends to be educational, entertainment, cultural. And the real gist of it is not just to enrich children when they come to the library, but to build within people the habit of coming to the library. The idea is that if we have a program every week, every Wednesday, for instance, during the course of the summer, we get parents in the habit of bringing their children to the library at that time every week, and that stays with them. And this way we build regular library users. And that's part of a purely practical goal in terms of keeping ourselves going. But also, we believe firmly that unlike a business where we want to build repeat customers so that we maintain our profit and stay in business, that by encouraging people to become habitual library users, we make a significant contribution to society as a whole. It's very difficult to measure the actual impact of libraries because what do you measure? How do you say what it is that encouraged a person to go to law school, for instance, and become a politician or a lawyer?
Well, you can see how many people are using the libraries. It's a very busy place whenever I go. And the other thing that I think is there's just unlimited books, because you go to the reference desk and from downtown library, I mean, they'll bring in the books, all the books that are available in the whole system are really available. So.
And this is one of the most wonderful changes that I've seen in my 15 years in this profession. And the Los Angeles Public Library is 126, I believe, years old now. The profession is close to 200 years old in this country alone. But in the last 15 years, the changes are monumental. When I got here, if you came to my library and asked me for a book I didn't have, then I had to get on the phone and call around and see if anybody else had it. Now, we have the realization of a dream that librarians have had forever, which is, we call it universal availability of information. The idea that everyone should have access to whatever information they want at any given time. There was a time when what I loved about that was that it was so grossly impractical. We'd never realized that, but it was still an ideal. Now actually we're coming close. Because of the internet, you can go to lapl.org. That's the library's homepage. You can pull up the library's card catalog. You can find the material you want. You can order it, regardless of whether it's in your local library or in whichever library is furthest from you. Chatsworth, San Pedro, Eagle Rock, whatever. And about 3 or 4 days later, you'll get a phone call at home, and it'll even leave a message on your answering machine if you're not there, saying your book is at the library, you have 8 days to come pick it up. And that opens up the entire 6 million volume collection to you, no matter where you live. Well, it never seemed fair that you should have the best library service if you live downtown, because that's where the biggest library was.
But now you have access to the biggest library in all the
Where
branches.
you are. Absolutely. And it goes a lot further than that, because through our homepage you can now do significant research. There are major magazine database resources. There's a thing called the Health Reference. Oh, they just changed the name on that. But what it is health information available. If you get a new prescription from your doctor and you'd like to know more about it before you start swallowing it, you can pull up articles about it that will tell you what its side effects are and so forth. There's all kinds of business information there. There's a wonderful thing called the biographical reference source that has enough information so that you should be able to take care of your kids' school assignments through at least middle school. It's just wonderful. I am so proud of us.
Yes, well, so am I, and that's why we really wanted other people to realize this treasure trove. How are these programs financed? Because they're really very high quality.
Programming in the libraries is financed a number of different ways. The Library Foundation is probably the source of, I don't want to say the biggest because I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, and many people deserve credit here, but they do a lot. They raise, I believe they raised $18 million for us last year, and a chunk of that money went towards providing programs in libraries, and that raises the level of our programming significantly, so that every library will have, I believe it was 6 children's programs within the last 6 months or so, paid for by the Library Foundation. Friends of the Library are citizen support groups that exist around virtually all of our branch libraries that help raise money by selling used books and things like that, which we use to hire performers to come to the library. But not all these programs are paid at all. Often what we get is someone who's willing to come and do a program for us because it's a subject they love.
They contribute their talents.
Absolutely. One of the things the Library Foundation has done, I'm sorry to jump around on you like
That's all
this,
right.
but I think it deserves some mention, is called LA Writes. What they did was provide a stipend for local authors to come and speak at local libraries. For instance, Al Martinez spoke at the Sunland Tujunga Branch Library. Gloria Hazlett, who wrote, I'm forgetting the name of the book. But at any rate, she was at the
But
North
that's a whole
Hollywood Library
series.
about 2 weeks ago.
I see. So there's a whole series of
Absolutely.
a variety of programs and
And
so on.
because of the cosmopolitan nature of LA, we get big names coming to do these things.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, how are the books selected? Who gets to choose the books and the videos and all these materials that you have, the magazines, so on? Who gets to choose? Who decides?
To me, this is a really interesting process. Some libraries choose them all through a central office, but in the Los Angeles Public Library, we are committed historically and adamantly to community service, and we believe the best way to provide that is to empower a person to get to know the community and choose the materials in that library based on their knowledge of the people who use that library. Each library has a branch manager who is responsible for buying books, but we break it down further. So the branch manager generally supervises everyone and is responsible for all of it, but is personally responsible for selecting materials for adults. There's also a young adult librarian who chooses materials for middle and high school students, and a children's librarian that chooses materials for everyone from toddler through 5th grade. And each one of those persons is responsible for choosing the materials, for creating a balanced collection, and for making sure that the material in that particular library is what that community needs.
Now, you also have volunteers that, what is it, do you call it literacy program, one-on-one helping children read? How does that work?
The LA Public Library, well, you're referring to 2 different programs here.
Oh, okay.
We've taken the lead early on in literacy issues. We have a program called the Library Adult Reading Program, and what we do is we recruit adults who need to learn to read and adults who would like to work with another adult to teach them to read. We use a method called Laubach, whereby we provide 12 hours of training for our volunteer in terms of working with workbooks and so on to help bring an adult up to what we consider a minimal reading level of about 6th grade. The theory being that once you're at that level, reading is what will make the improvement, not practicing per se with a workbook and sounding out vowels and all that. And we've done wonderful things that way. Service to adults, creating readers, as it were, is something that is a symbiotic matter for libraries, as well as just being something that makes us all feel really good. The other program you're talking about is called Grandparents and Books. This was created by a woman named Maureen Wade, who is one of our librarians, who noticed that within the library at any given time, there were two groups of people who sort of needed something to do: little kids and senior citizens, folks who would sort of come in and hang around for a while, and she decided to try to put them together. So on a very experimental base, one person at a time, she started working with older adults and having them read to children in the library. And it worked, so she expanded it to more older adults, and then we expanded it through branches. It went through a process of getting grants and becoming a regular part of library service, and now at virtually every library in town, you will find volunteer adults, mostly older folks, but not strictly.
Honorary grandparents.
Honorary grandparents, and they will read to children in the library in the afternoon.
Yes.
Often what they find, though, is that the children want to be read to a point, and then they want to read back. And it just makes the most wonderful relationships.
So do you pair off a couple, the older person and the child, and they meet regularly, or is it a random thing?
It varies, because anytime you have people involved, they vary things, and our basic situation is that we want to set it up so that it will work. And then each volunteer has some leeway in terms of how they do it. Mostly it's done on a walk-in basis. If you were our volunteer grandmother, you would come into the branch on whatever afternoon of the week was yours. You would put on I believe it's a purple apron that says Grandparents and Books, so that you would be easy to identify. You know, we don't want to get into that talking to strangers situation.
Oh, I see.
Well, everyone has to be careful. When you put on your purple
So you have
apron,
the uniform.
Exactly.
Any child could come over and say, read me a book.
Absolutely.
I see.
Absolutely. And when you've been there a while, they do, because the children in the community get to know you. At first, you wind up, walking around going, hi, would you like me to read you a story?
I see.
And the relationships develop.
Ah, I see. That's
It's a beautiful
nice thing. That is a nice thing. And you have that going on in all the branches now, or is that?
Well, it's volunteer-based. So there are some communities where we have 10 grandparents, and there's someone there every afternoon. There are some communities where we have 1 or 2. It depends on people's interest in coming. If people are interested, they could either come to the library's homepage, or they could dial the library's information number at 213-228-7000 and get put through to the Children's Services Department, where Maureen would talk to them about how the program works, when we could provide training, and where they might be stationed.
I see. Well, we can put that phone number on at the end of the program.
That would be splendid.
Might want to. Now, I've seen the grandparent and child pairs. I've seen them in the library, but I haven't seen adults. Where do they do their work?
Good. Well, the nature of literacy work is that most folks don't really want to stand up and say, hi, I'm 45 years old and I can't read. So we want that done on a discreet basis.
I see.
If someone wants to talk about those issues, we have no problem with that.
So
but on the other hand, we want them to feel comfortable, respected, and like their needs are confidential.
So if an adult who wants to learn to read comes into the library and speaks to a librarian, then privately the librarian pairs them up. Is that how that goes? Or?
Basically, our volunteer department is evolving, so our procedures for dealing with it will probably vary over the next few years. But at the moment, if you came into my library and said, I have a friend who needs to learn to read, and that's often how it is. But sometimes people just say, I need to learn to read.
Right.
What we would do is try to get you on the phone to the coordinators downtown, who would talk about the procedures for getting you a tutor. They'd get your personal information and so forth, and then they generally say they'd call you back as soon as they can let you know when.
And then you pair people up.
Exactly, and that's always a good trick, because think about the role of the really good teachers you've had in your life versus the ones that are not so memorable. So part of the trick is to put the right volunteer and the right adult learner together.
You have to be a real matchmaker.
It's true. It's probably one of the most sensitive and difficult may not be the right word, but you really have a sense of wanting it to come out right.
Good. That's good. Well, it's been a pleasure. We've run out of time, but I want to thank you so much
I've enjoyed being here, and
sharing
honestly.
all of this information. It's going to be very valuable to a lot of people.
Check schedules at your local library for some of their excellent cultural presentations. For children and adults as well, we recommend storytellers like Naila Malik with their colorful costumes and stories from many different cultures.
A long time ago, in a small town in Nigeria, there lived two women, Fatim and Binta, who were the best of friends. Now, Binta and Fatim were grown now, but they had been friends all of their lives, and everyone who knew them, which was everyone in the town, would agree that Binta and Fatim were the best of friends.
Laurie Oschatz and Royce Heron, with their wonderful Flights of Fantasy, are surefire favorites.
So Pepe and I, we're going to take our burro to market to sell it so that we'll have corn seed to plant corn, and then we'll have corn for tortillas in the fall.
I don't want to sell the burro, Papa.
You don't want to be hungry in the fall either, Pepe.
I know.
So one morning, very early, we started off down the road to market. Now,
Laura Catherine and Gary Gillette show how Aesop's fables were really about human foibles.
From Greece. It's an Aesop's fable, and it's called The Salt Peddler and the Donkey. And guess who gets to be the donkey?
You?
No.
Yeah. Oh.
You're the donkey. Put
Oh,
on the
goody.
ears.
Yeah.
Well, the salt peddler and the donkey, the salt peddler is a man who sells salt for a living. And he took his donkey down to the sea.
Access to all the materials in the complete Los Angeles library system are available via internet by clicking www.lapl.org. Some of the services provided on the internet include the complete card catalog for the entire system, with notations of which books are filed in which branch, 24-hour-a-day access to the unabridged Oxford Dictionary, and a database of all the important newspapers, magazines, and scholarly journals, where you can read practically any article from the last 10 years or so right on your home screen. If you'd like to participate in library community service as a volunteer literacy tutor or in any other capacity, call area code 213-228-7000. We hope you have found this program intellectually stimulating and that you will continue to investigate the ideas raised here. To connect with other like-minded individuals, please contact any of the dozens of free thought organizations, such as the American Humanist Association, American Atheists, the Center for Inquiry, and Atheists United. You may also email the producer directly via leebaker27@gmail.com. This program has been distributed through the courtesy of Atheists United.